It's shocking to consider that Five Nights at Freddy's has risen the ranks to become not only one of the biggest gaming franchises ever, but also one of the biggest horror franchises, all within the span of only a decade. Since its debut, there's been a plethora of sequels to the initial point-and-click game, all of which aim to expand upon the cast of characters, the lore, and most importantly, the gameplay. After 4 entries of doing basically the same thing just with a different rule set, the series creator Scott Cawthon had decided he would take FNAF to the next level, create something entirely new for the player to experience with these characters, and that came in the form of FNAF World. But that got delisted. For reasons. So instead, I'd like to consider the first major jump in scope for FNAF came in the form of 2019's Help Wanted, a VR game which aimed to not only faithfully recreate the first 3 games in virtual reality, but also added in a ton of new modes as well, such as vent repair and maintenance. Tied together with an all-new story that attempted to recontextualize all previous FNAF games as nothing more than an elaborate hoax, created by Cawthon to besmirch the name of Fazbear Entertainment. But perhaps there's more truth to those games than they were letting on. Ghost Rabbit! Help Wanted was a big hit. And not only with FNAF fans. It was actually a fantastic showcase of a fun and easily accessible horror game that takes advantage of being in VR. Helps that it was already based on an IP that had a giant dedicated fanbase. I'm sure this ended up selling a lot of folks on VR headsets who wanted to try it out for themselves. That's me, I'm folks. I think what helped it so much was that minigame structure. You know, this is a lot more easy to pick up and understand compared to something like Resident Evil Village. I've never picked up a gun before. How do you expect me to reload this thing on the fly? Whereas I have stuck my head in the mouth of a giant animatronic bear. That's just Tuesday for me. Underneath the horror exterior, I'd say Help Wanted is actually a perfect VR party game. What with its mini-games not lasting more than 10 minutes and you constantly progressing by unlocking new ones. I'd say this is a game that's at its best when you're hanging out with a bunch of buddies, taking turns to see who can beat the round so you can move on to the next. If only I had some of those. But even still, it had legs to stand on when it came to being a single-player experience too. Something new and exciting for longtime fans of FNAF, providing them with something old and familiar, but completely remade from the ground up with all new features and a story which aimed to set up the future of the franchise. Now, saying all that, isn't it utterly bizarre to think that nobody ever talks about its sequel? That's right, some of you may not even know of this game's existence, but there was indeed a sequel to Help Wanted in 2023. Presumably to coincide with the theatrical film. Makes sense. FNAF was about to get an insane amount of exposure from a general audience, and so it's natural to want to have a game come out around the same time so new fans have something to flock to. Although going with this might not have been the smartest choice. Not only because the likelihood of them owning a VR headset would have been slim, especially since it's been made clear the average gamer isn't gravitating towards this over looking at a damn monitor. Where's the immersion? But also because the movie would be based off the first couple FNAF games, so if they were to immediately jump right into Help Wanted 2, the fuck are you? Despite FNAF fans engaging with it for a bit, there was nowhere near as much hype surrounding this as the first one, probably due to a couple factors such as the novelty of VR wearing off, focusing on slightly more obscure characters, and a good chunk of the FNAF fanbase not being a fan of the security breach era, which this game was basing most of its ideas on. But I think the nail in the coffin for Help Wanted 2 was 2 things. 1, releasing without a flat mode, making it accessible to folks who don't use VR. No, don't get me wrong, it did get a flat mode 6 months later. And 2, I think the other factor which contributed to it going under the radar was that it didn't come out in the MetaQuest, by far the VR set most commonly used by kids, otherwise known as FNAF's target demographic. Now don't get me wrong, it did get a release on MetaQuest 5 months later. All of this combined to create what I would consider the least talked about FNAF game, one that very few people discuss and even fewer have actually played. Like, I see more people talking about Into the Pit than Help Wanted 2, and nobody talks about Into the Pit. I mean, just look at the Steam reviews, not that they're entirely indicative of how much a game is sold or anything, but despite coming out almost an entire year later, Into the Pit has roughly double the amount of reviews on Steam. Like, that's pretty crazy, right? I myself was pretty hyped about it upon announcement. It looked like a really cool evolution of the first. But upon release, my only thought was, I'll get around to it eventually. This game is over a year old. It got to a point where I started to ask myself, did the game just suck? Is that why nobody talks about it? Like the first, despite releasing buggy as all hell, had such a fun and familiar gameplay loop that it allowed you to look past how rough the overall package was, before updates at least. Whereas maybe the sequel was just bad to its core. So I thought it was finally time for me to dust off the Oculus I bought all those years back, solely to play the first Help Wanted and never touched again, to figure out why its sequel didn't catch on nearly as well. But first, if there's one thing more frightening than Garten a Ban, aside from a lot of stuff, it's improper grooming. And that's why I'm happy this video is sponsored by Manscaped. Manscaped are revolutionizing the landscape of man's grooming with more than 12 million men worldwide using their products. They've mastered the art of man's grooming with their hygiene tools. I especially love the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra Electric Trimmer and the Performance Package 5.0 Ultra. I mean, they've got Ultra in the name, how could they not be great? They've both been upgraded from their previous models. For example, the upgraded trimmer features wider, longer, and rounded teeth that can cut through hair with ease, yet are still gentle on your skin. With the Performance Package, you're also getting an amazing waterproof ear and nose hair trimmer, crop soother, and a crop preserver for your comfort after shaving, and 2 free gifts, the Boxers 2.0 and Shed 2.0 to keep all your grooming gear organized and ready to go. So what are you waiting for? Head over to manscaped.com and get your hands on the Performance Package 5.0 Ultra today. And when you use promo code LSMARK, you'll get 20% off, plus free international shipping. Free! Again, that's 20% off, plus free shipping, plus 2 free gifts with promo code LSMARK at manscaped.com. And thanks Manscaped for sponsoring this video. That is not a joke, by the way. I have not touched this thing in like 5 years. It was covered in dust. Also, new development since that last video. VR now gives me a headache. I don't know why. I can never get the thing completely set up in a way that's comfortable on my head. One of the lenses always manages to be slightly more blurry than what I want, but whatever, I'll do it for you, Freddy Fazbear. Right off the bat, one of the strongest aspects of the first Help Wanted was its atmosphere. Like, the second you boot that thing up, you're standing right in front of Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica, towering above you. Everyone says it, but the footage does not do this screen justice. It is so much more intimidating being there firsthand, especially when you look right behind your shoulder and see Foxy right behind you. Immediately, it's striking, impactful, and, most importantly, kinda scary. In comparison, simply from frame 1, Help Wanted 2's title screen had me a tad bewildered. The biggest source of confusion coming from the roster. Funtime Freddy, Funtime Chica, and Glamrock Roxy. What a weird pairing of characters. Obviously, this is meant to convey that the game will be pulling from Sister Location, Pizzeria Simulator, and Security Breach, but these are characters pulled from such vastly different eras of FNAF that it causes things to be kinda jarring. You know, the first game kept things focused on the original Five Nights at Freddy's, despite it featuring characters from as recent as Sister Location. It's like if that title screen had Freddy, Toy Chica, and Phantom Puppet. They don't look like they belong together. I also think it's odd how they make a big effort to highlight Baby, what with her shadow being projected onto the screen and then appearing right behind you. Makes you think she'd have a bigger presence, but I think she only ends up being in like one of these mini-games and not even a base one. Saying that to make a complete 180. I actually think this intro is better than the first in just about every conceivable way. Like, this made me jump the first time I watched it. Whereas the original simply opened with you staring right at the trio. After years of playing it, the impact has started to wane. Especially when you realize they're all just static models, only saved by the unsettling addition of their heads following you as you move. Help Wanted 2 keeps the same idea but ramps it up to 11. As you open with them all staring at you from the distance, static like before, until the lights go out and they disappear, Baby now standing right behind you as the lights turn on and suddenly they're all way too close for comfort. I don't know if it's just me, but every time I launched the game I forgot just how close they got to you, so it was a shock each and every time. And so, immediately, first impressions are pretty strong. With this, you're given the game's general setup. Last time you were hired to playtest the new VR game designed to cleanse Fazbear Entertainment of their tainted image, whereas this time you're doing a bunch of scenarios that'll train you into becoming a prime employee of the company. Much less meta this time around. Much less, well, anything, really. It works for what it is, but this is perhaps my first big indicator as to why this game didn't get much attention, other than being completely overshadowed by the release of the movie. These FNAF games live or die in the amount of discussion around their stories. How it fits into the lore, what it adds, what it retcons, and the subsequent arguments that follow. All we really get here is the hub world being a clear nod to the pizzeria from FNAF 6, which if you're unaware is eventually revealed to be buried deep beneath the Pizzaplex from Security Breach. Also, it's a lot less run down here, so who knows where it falls into the timeline. I mean, I'm sure the fans know. I bet that shit got cracked day of release. While the first Help Wanted straight away gave you the tease of this strange glitchy rabbit staring at you from the distance, there's not much to say or do here right away other than play minigames. It isn't completely disparate from the first game, however, it still intends on being a sequel. At least that's what I can gather from these random glitch trap cameos scattered across your screen at certain points. But whatever, man. Who actually comes to Five Nights at Freddy's for the lore, am I right? In this fanbase, it's all about the gameplay. And so let's see what Help Wanted 2 has to offer. Okay, so I have to admit something. These games scare me. Not the regular ones, I can play that shit no problem, but I don't know, there's just something about seeing these characters in 3D spaces right up in your grill, that terrifies me. And so I was happy to see that they chose to ease you in with only a select few minigames available at the start, all of which have the fear factor set to a mild -42. Like last time, your minigames have been segmented, now separated into folders on your monitor, and thankfully they're organized a whole lot better than the first Help Wanted's. We got Backstage, which sees you helping out a security breach robot with whatever they need. Food Prep, where you help out a security breach robot with their food orders. Faz Kid usually involves a less threatening and more mechanically simple task. Ticket Booth has you in a carnival setting. Staff Only sees you helping out robots with more maintenance type stuff. And finally, Sister Location features various recreations of different segments from, naturally, FNAF World. Yeah, other than the Sister Location stuff, there are no direct adaptations of any one FNAF game this time around. Presumably another reason as to why the overall package seemed less enticing. A large part of the appeal for Help Wanted was the prospect of being put inside those initial few entries. From the beginning, folks always talked about how terrifying these games would be in VR, and Help Wanted only proved that. And so I'm sure to some, not giving that same treatment to Pizzeria Simulator might have seemed disappointing. And while I don't really mind now, it does kind of make Sister Location stick out like a sore thumb, at least among the rest of the stuff in here. The aesthetic just doesn't really match what FNAF has become in recent years. You know, I'd say Pizzeria Sim and Security Breach fit together a whole lot better than with Sister Location. But at the same time, how are you not going to jump at the chance to adapt these missions? In a lot of ways, I'd argue it demands VR more than any other FNAF game. Always felt like it was being held back by restricting itself to that Scott Cawthon click team aesthetic. Like, you watch the trailer for that one and it's fucking amazing looking. These characters are so alive and have such unsettling movements. But in the actual game, and even more disappointingly, there's actually no minigame in here directly based off Pizzeria Simulator, which is confusing because, well, Funtime Chic is right on the title screen. Okay, also, sorry. You know, I called her Rockstar Chica earlier and had to dub over it in post. But I was wrong. This is Rockstar Chica. Funtime Chica just also appears in Pizzeria Simulator, but they are not the same character. Silly me, how could I mix that up? Anyways, no, she's instead shoved into a Sister Location mission, alongside Funtime Freddy and Funtime Foxy. A few of the other Sister Location animatronics also being scattered across different minigames. It only makes it more confusing why she's on the title screen. She arguably has the least amount of presence here. I'd say fucking Pig Patch is more involved. Now, Help Wanted 2 contains an initial total of 16 games, which may not sound like a whole lot for a minigame collection. That is until you realize that it's actually 16 minigame types. In reality, we have way more games here compared to the first, which, if you exclude all the bonus nights, only had around 12 unique missions. And even that's being generous considering just how many use the exact same location, but give you a slightly different threat to deal with. Like, I always find it strange how Dark Rooms contained Plush Trap and Nightmare Balloon Boy, which are pretty much just clones of each other. Then you got Plush Baby, which sure still revolves around the flashlight, but has an entirely new rule set and location. And then Funtime Foxy, which is something else entirely. Point is, once they were done recreating the first 3 FNAF games, I find that things got a tad disorganized. The only issue I have with this one is how uneven the amount of games are per folder. Like, you go to Staff Only and that shit is near filled with files, yet you go over to Ticket Booth and there's fucking 3. Still, upon booting the game up, I was initially kinda overwhelmed to see just how many files there were, even if many of them were later revealed to be inaccessible due to glitchy shenanigans. But my main question was, how are you gonna make this without directly adapting any games? Well, let's find out by taking a look at our first minigame. Fucking 15 minutes into the video, I could rant about this franchise all day. So I decided to start with Arts and Crafts because it sounded easy. And hey, I was right. This game places you in the Superstar Daycare from Security Breach, where you're faced with Sun, who wants you to do a set of 3 different tasks, each increasing in difficulty. Now, the first thing that came to mind when jumping into this was, damn, this game looks nice! And that is thankfully a trend throughout the entire thing. I think hands down, this is the best and most polished looking FNAF game to date. Which, hey, I mean, it's the most recent, so I'd fucking hope so. At first I wondered if this was simply due to Steelwool being able to reuse assets created for Security Breach, which, I mean, I'm sure is true. But because of that, any other set piece or animatronic from the series had to match that level of quality so as to not stand out. It looks so nice that going back to the original Help Wanted makes it look like a bloody PS3 game in comparison, what with all their chunky, jagged models and often low-quality textures. Help Wanted 2 is what I remember the first game looking like when I first played it. It is so good looking, and I'm gonna be saying this a lot, but especially in VR. There's such a great level of world design here. The lighting is varied, giving every mission its own unique feel. Seeing characters like Funtime Freddy and Ennard super close up with such fantastic looking models is genuinely frightening. And I don't know, everything just has this nice sheen to it. All the first game has are ugly Carls. Ew. Anyways, Arts and Crafts is one of the most basic games here, but also one of the most fun in my opinion. You're behind a desk with a dart gun in your hand and have to shoot the items hanging on the shelves in order to put them on your desk, and use them to recreate whatever sun is showing on the screen. Things start simple enough, all you gotta do is correctly fill in the character portrait with the right colors, so easy a baby could do it. But after that, you're shown a paper pal with a ton of varied parts you gotta find and put together, and then finally, you're asked to do both. Recreate the paper pal and then paint all of its parts the right color, all while sun looms over you and eventually starts turning off the lights and wasting your time. As if it runs out, I have to assume he jump scares you. I don't know, I never lost. It's basic and definitely doesn't leave the same impression on you as playing that first night of Five Nights at Freddy's in VR, but it's an addictive, fun time, and that's all I could really ask for in a VR game. Things are starting strong. I'd give it a solid 7 out of 10. I'm doing that now. Oh yeah, like last time, beating every mission rewards you with a prize. Although this time you unfortunately can't pick them up and toss them around.
Come on.
Women, am I right?
Whoa.
But despite that, I think the rewards are handled much better this time around. Instead of just having a single area where you can summon these items to play with like a baby. Now some will appear throughout your hub, sometimes they'll appear next to you to fuck around with, and other will become statues you can view on the stage, like getting the chance to get a good look at Glamrock Bonnie, who also made a quick cameo in Ruin. I like cool fan service like this when it's in these sort of games. Steel will have always had an issue when it came to balancing that kind of stuff. Security Breach threw in so many references to past locations and characters, and it caused major confusion throughout the fanbase. What's just a fun nod, and what's actual lore we now have to try and fit into this somehow. But here it's like, who fucking cares, it's basically a spin-off, you know? After Arts and Crafts, I decided to head over to Fazkey to try out Bonkabon, and really, you get what's on the tin. It's a simple whack-a-mole game except with Bonbon from Sister Location. There's even little bonnets that'll appear for some extra points. The biggest thing I was impressed with here was just how tactile it all was. I mean, I suppose that's only more testament to how immersive the VR is. But even though I'm not actually hitting anything in real life, except my window, you know, you really feel the impact of those whacks. This one was a lot of fun too, especially when the lights go out and plush babies start jumping out. You gotta whack them 3 times to get rid of them before they jump scare ya. Bonkabon gets a 5. Now, I enjoyed this game, but if you're noticing any kind of pattern from these first two, it's that these are way more mechanically basic compared to the majority of the first Help Wanted. In a lot of ways, I prefer this approach. Makes it way easier to jump in and get to grips with things. But I can imagine there were tons of fans out there disappointed Steelwool didn't take the same approach of full-on recreations. This feels way more like a party game, something to turn on and play for half an hour with some friends. Which would be fine, but it means in single player, I'm most likely never gonna play Bonkabon again, because I've experienced everything there is to from one go-around. And each subsequent time playing it is gonna be the exact same, whereas last time some of them at least got 4 nights, and different variations of other missions. Either way, next up I stayed in the Fazkey and tried out Feather Blast, another where you can probably take a good guess as to what you're up to here. All I could think while playing was, who the fuck is this? He looks like one of the Rockstar animatronics, but I'm 100% sure he's not in that game. Apparently his name is Carney, but I have no clue if that's his official name or if the fans just gave it to him. Either way, he's presenting things here, with Dreadbear indicating your score to you at the other side. If it goes to the bottom, you're dead. Although if your score ever goes that low, I'm gonna assume you have no arms to even play with, because I was never at threat of not being in the higher levels. It was no challenge at all. I thought it was pretty cool that the area you're playing this in is the same from the Curse of Dreadbear DLC from the original Help Wanted, but other than that, I don't have much to say. Thankfully, after beating it, you're gifted another Feather Blast segment, and I enjoyed this one way more simply due to how chaotic things got by the end. This time you're given your laser gun and a ball to throw. Some targets can only be busted with the ball and some the laser. And so I was panicking the entire time, desperately trying to switch back and forth, keeping track of which would offer me the most points in any given scenario. That is until I remembered that I had 2 hands and could hold both at the same time. Not my proudest moment. It becomes a lot more tense halfway through when you unleash the plush babies. Now as you try to keep your score up, you'll find them approaching you from random areas on the floor, so you gotta quickly throw a ball at them before they jump scare ya. If anything, I wish they would have just ditched the first Phaser Blast and put you right into this one. It's way more fun. Phaser Blast 1 gets a 4 out of 10, while 2 gets a 6. So far, all these games have been mildly entertaining, but there's nothing truly wowing me. So I'm curious if going forward any of these games will attempt to even have the slightest bit more depth. Next up, I went for DJ Music Time, and holy shit, I was not expecting Music Man to be this goddamn huge in VR. I never really cared all that much for DJ Music Man in Security Breach. I don't find he did enough in that game aside from the chase sequence at the end. And while the gameplay here is possibly as straightforward as we've seen so far, I find it engaging simply due to how massive he is here. He seems more threatening than ever. The gimmick this time is that the screen in front of you will show a series of symbols for a few seconds, and now you gotta recreate it using the dials and sliders in front of you. It's just a different variation on the arts and crafts minigame. Once you're done, just submit it and see if you got it right. That's it. One time when submitting, I accidentally changed it last second and realized, oh, you don't even get jump scared for getting it wrong, okay. Like I said, his intimidating presence here does most of the heavy lifting when it comes to my thoughts towards it. I never find it all too tough to remember, and they even have a button to the side that puts it back up for you to see again. Saying that, like with Phaser Blast, you unlock a harder version of the mission after beating the first, where there's an actual threat to worry about, shocker! Now as you attempt to recreate the image, these mini Music Men will jump out of nearby holes in the floor and walls to try and attack you, and so you gotta snap a photo of them with your newly equipped Phazcam to scare them away. Dude, nothing made me jump more than when one of these guys came right in front of me. I legit screamed. I was not expecting that. It sucks because them adding this one element to keep an eye out for has me on my toes the entire time. So much so that, again, I can't help but wish they had just started with this one to begin with. I don't understand the mindset in starting off with these basic-ass tutorial missions. They don't really feel like they're wasting a slot. You know, why would I ever go back to the first one when the second one is infinitely better in every way? It's like in the recreation of Five Nights at Freddy's 3 in the first Help Wanted. I get that the original game had no Springtrap on the first night, but when you're putting it in this package with a level select, it's like, okay, here's a level where I just sit there for 5 minutes and do nothing. Great. They only feel as if they're wasting a slot. And I guess it would make more sense if that were the case for every mission, but as we're gonna soon see, some of these just throw you into it with no word or warning. I'm not sure why you can't just have an option on the select screen to play a tutorial or something, as I have to assume it's another reason why the game came off as underwhelming to folks. Some of the most tense missions in here are the ones you have to actively unlock, as all you're stuck with in the beginning are basic, unscary tutorials. Music Man 1 gets a 3 while 2 gets a 7. That one addition made it a million times better. In between these two, I also tried out Bonnie Bowl, a game I was initially excited to see them tackle after it was supposedly cut from Security Breach before release. But now it's in VR. And it's basically just VR bowling. Although, unlike Bonkabon, I don't find this to be anywhere near as immersive or responsive. Bowling balls are like heavy and stuff, and so it just never felt like I could accurately make the swings I wanted to. At least with Wii bowling, there's a disconnect between you and what you're seeing on screen. But when I'm made to believe I'm physically in the space, it becomes a lot more apparent when I don't find what's happening in front of me matches my actions. Also, that's not to even discuss the fact that, you know, this is a horror game. All you gotta do to win here is complete a set, no matter the score. The horror elements are so incredibly tacked on that I don't even know why they bothered. After each round, a little image comes up on the screen that'll affect the next turn. If it's a Bonnie head, he'll start approaching you, in which you gotta roll a ball between his teeth fast enough before he gets to you, and nothing happens. Sometimes there'll be crocodile obstacles, sometimes a plush baby will appear and you gotta hit it, which almost always fucks up your roll for that turn. And when Moon appears, you just gotta flash a light at him right above you. That's it. If their goal was to make this scary, chaotic version of bowling, then I think a lot more needed to be done here. As is, it's VR bowling with a FNAF coat of paint. 4 out of 10. After this, I tried out the salon minigame I got for beating arts and crafts, and it actually makes sense why they'd be in the same group as it's basically the same game, except this time you gotta do the correct makeup for a series of staff bots, making sure it matches whatever is on screen within a time limit. It's not scary, but hey, I had fun. I don't have a lot to say about all of them, okay? 6 out of 10. I went to food prep after and checked out the El Chipme game, where you assume the role of head chef, completing orders on time for all the staff bots. This reminded me of being a kid and playing that Papa Pizzeria game, except in VR! I had a ton of fun with this one, even if it's not scary at all. Noticing a trend. Basically, you got your sides right in front of you with a ladle to scoop them with, a soda dispenser to your left, and the main course to your right. Each dish has a number on the top and you gotta enter it into the microwave to cook it, while also making sure you squirt the correct sauces on them. It sounds simple and it is, but it can get kinda stressful at times, especially when you know your time limit is running out, yet you got like 3 fuckers still waiting for food. As someone who had the misfortune of working at a Subway, it was a very accurate recreation of the average fast food employee experience. I'm working on it! I had so much fun with this one that I jumped right into the follow-up you unlock for beating it. Pizza, pizza, pizza. You make pizza. Same game, more shit to consider. Now you got fries as a side and this pizzerito machine, which is just a pizza rolled up like a burrito. Someone out there watching this just thought to themselves that sounded good, and to you I say, I know, right? The biggest addition this time is Chica, who comes in to judge your food anytime you ring the bell. If it's wrong in any way, it's an instant death and you gotta start over. I wasn't expecting her to physically be in the area as you cook, and so you can see my genuine fear as I turn around and see her right next to me. But these missions go on for a while, and after a bit I find her constant line reusage annoying. She says the same 3 things on repeat the entire time. It got extremely old. Even still, this was probably my favorite so far. El Chip gets a 6 and Pizza 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 gets an 8. Next up, I went to staff only and tried Cold Storage. This game's attempt at recreating the parts and service missions from the first Help Wanted, except instead of the animatronics sitting there in silence, motionless. You got Kel and Goff talking to you the whole way through, which certainly lessens a bit of the tension those parts and service games had, especially since there aren't 4 of these like last time. It only lasts around 2 to 3 minutes. All you gotta do is make sure he's cooled down and retrieve the cake from his stomach. There's not much else to it aside from one successful jump scare moment. The biggest praise I can give it is yet again those visuals, like fucking these models are fantastic, damn. 5 out of 10. I decided to go back to Arts and Crafts to check out the new Salon game I unlocked. This time you're getting Roxy ready for her performance. Only difference is, she wants constant attention, and so you have to make sure you keep looking at her while matching whatever's on the screen. I get the idea behind it, and I imagine it's way tougher in flat mode, because in VR all you gotta do is keep your head facing her while darting your eyes to the side. Makes things a tad more difficult, but once again, I would have rather we just started here instead of having to do the security bots first. Still though, I'd give it a solid 7 out of 10. It's effective for what it is. Now, I have a confession to make. I have purposefully been playing all the easy-looking games. Anytime I sat down to play, finally ready to tackle some of the more frightening-sounding challenges, I would wimp out and go back to an easy one. But it has unfortunately gotten to the point where there's none left. All there is to try now are the missions I've been avoiding like the plague. Because I'm scared. But okay, there's no more dancing around it. It's finally time to check out the sister location folder and try Belora's gallery, where she's the one dancing around me. See, I made it work. Like I said way earlier, sister location is the FNAF game, which I think could have benefited most from a VR version. Most of the encounters there relied a ton on being aware of the 3D space you're in, and actually moving around it freely, which wasn't accomplished amazingly considering the limitations Scott was dealing with. I also think making a game of this scope in only 9 months had something to do with it. Resulted in a game that I played once, found neat but overall incredibly infuriating, and never have the desire to ever play again. Anyways, the first Help Wanted, oddly enough, adapted the Funtime Foxy level from Sister Location, but no others, presumably due to time or budget constraints. And so finally we get to see some of the game's most iconic moments recreated in 3D! I mean VR! And dude, what an encounter to start on. This is easily the most stressful stage I've played yet. So basically, you start laying down in the ground with Belora off to your right. And there's a door all the way at the other end of the hallway you gotta get to in order to win. Only issue is, shortly after crawling towards the exit, Belora gets off her stage and starts parading around the room. If she hears ya, you're dead. Only made worse when these mini Renas start approaching you from the shadows, giggling, with you having to toss them away before she realizes you're there. I never cared all too much for this mission in Sister Location, but being able to physically see Belora twirling past right in your face was enough to cement this as one of the scariest experiences I've ever had with a FNAF game. I think what I appreciate so much about it is that the room for error isn't as set in stone as the other missions we've had so far. You know, a big part of those early FNAF games was the strategizing, figuring out what you're doing wrong and how to avoid that next time. It's something the first help wanted also got done pretty well, but here, not so much so far. It's okay, it's evidently not what most of these missions are trying to be, but for a bit of variety, it was nice not to be plopped into a single position and be told exactly what to do. Like in Bonnie Bowl, if I die to Moon, oh, I just gotta remember to shine my torch quicker next time. Whereas here, there's so much more to consider. How fast should I crawl? Should I try to approach the mini-arenas early to throw them away, or wait until they come to me? Should I crawl backwards when I hear Ballora? Or will that risk her hearing me? I couldn't have asked for more. 10 out of 10. To avoid the other sister location games for a bit, I then checked out the ticket booth to try out the carousel. I actually recall this being one of the few stages used to promote the game upon announcement, which honestly I don't get as this one is super underwhelming. The closest thing I could compare it to would be Vent Repair from the first Help Wanted, just not as interesting. You gotta perform a series of 3 basic tasks to fix the carousel, as Moon lurks in the background, slowly approaching you. Each time you fix something, things get a little more hectic, but I only find it to make things easier. All you gotta do is shine a torch in his face. So when the carousel starts moving, the more you fix it, all you need to do is look in the exact same general area, and eventually he'll circle back around. This one came and went. The ending where you gotta do nothing but search for him for a minute was a little stressful, but other than that, not all that impressed. 6 out of 10. For beating it, you unlock Captain Foxy's Log Ride, which is basically just a longer and more boring version of Feather Blast. It was a neat bit of downtime after some of the more stressful games here, but that's about it. The main thing I remember about this one is the introduction of Jacko Moon. He just sorta stands there. Yeah. As well as the place eventually getting overrun by these weird glitchy effects very reminiscent of Security Breach Ruin. Huh. 2 out of 10. Up next is First Aid starring Helpy fucking dying right there on the table. Basically, you're given a set amount of problems with him you can identify with the scanner, and then you just follow the instructions on how to fix him, whether it be hammering his knee or giving him vitamins. At first, I was confused on what the threat was. Like, what's my punishment for doing something wrong? That is until he starts screaming after certain procedures and Pigpatch starts to crawl towards you, appearing in either the 2 vents to your sides or right in front. Now you gotta put the laughing gas mask on him as quickly as possible or else they'll attack you. Now, I'm not sure if I'm just like an amazing gaming whiz or something, but it took me writing this part to even realize Pigpatch was supposed to be the threat here because I never even saw him. I legit thought there was no fear of losing this entire time. Saying this, the next First Aid mission definitely fixed that. This time Lefty will come for ya, and Jesus Christ dude, the vents are so seriously underutilized in these VR games. Ever since I saw Springtrap crawling towards you in the first Help Wanted, it's made me super scared anytime I see one of these in a minigame. It is so spooky watching them slowly crawl towards you. Other than that, the only other stipulation for the second go around is that occasionally the TV will switch on, and you gotta use the remote to turn it off before they come for ya. At first, I thought the TV was playing a victory jingle, and so I sat and waited for the screen to fade to black as Lefty rapidly approached me. I was terrified. I feel like all that was missing here was a time limit of some sort, because really, you can just hold the remote in your hand if you're stressed out and wait for the TV to go off. Also, I don't know if it's just me, but I wasted like 10 minutes standing around like an idiot not knowing what to do, because the screen was telling me to inject Helpy with this red stuff, and so I kept trying over and over again, but nothing was working. That wasn't until I realized I was actually using the orange stuff, and the red stuff was simply packed away in the back of my kit. I mean, am I dumb or just colorblind, because this stuff did not look orange to me. Still, I had a good time with First Aid. First gets a 6 and the second gets a 7. With this, we get to one of the final missions, and by far the one I was dreading the most. Breaker Room. Now, this was already one of the most stressful missions of Sister Location, having to make tons of noise by holding on these buttons as Funtime Freddy gets closer and closer, your only method of deterring him being to use a voice box convincing him to go back to his stage. I was not expecting the room to be this small. I always got the idea from playing the original that this was some big-ass room, but no, it's fucking tiny. Playing this in VR is a game changer. It is by far the most scary mission out of the entire package. Instead of holding down buttons, you're now holding down levers, as you get to physically witness Freddy wander around the room staring right at you. And even worse, to combat the issue of allowing you to use one hand to pull the lever and the other to use the megaphone, half of the breakers require you to hold down 2 levers, and you gotta spend time fucking around with them to see which 2 control it. I did not want to have to do this one over and over again, so I took my fucking time. This took me like 10 minutes. And I am so happy I beat it first try so I never had to play it again. It's that scary, 10 out of 10. And finally, to round out these missions, we end on Private Room. Ennard. Was a tad underwhelming. In the gameplay department, that is, because when it comes to looks, this right here is a perfect score. This amazing recreation of the secret room from Sister Location. This vent directly in front of you. As Ennard roams around, slowly getting closer. Set up like your usual FNAF game, survive till 6 AM. I imagine going in blind this would be one of the scariest games out of the whole package, but I've played enough FNAF 1 to realize that you don't actually have to pay attention to where he is on the cameras. When he approaches your door, you'll see him start to slowly walk towards it, which looks cool, sure, but there's so much time here to close it. So all you really need to do is keep your camera on the vent to close it when he gets near, and pay attention to the sign cues so you know when he's about to come to the door. Still though, this was a great time, even if just on a purely visual level. 8 out of 10. And with that, I've completed all the minigames on FNAF Help 1. The fuck? A Faz Wrench? From FNAF Ruin? Oh, you gotta be kidding me. So, after beating all the minigames, you unlock the means to open up this door to the back, in which you find Princess Quest 4, a recurring arcade game in the series which contains some not-so-subtle parallels to the actual FNAF lore. I've been collecting coins throughout the entire game, but apparently I can't access it, so... Take your mask off. Wait a second. Oh my god! So, in a shocking turn of events, you were wearing the augmented reality Vanny mask that was introduced in the first Help Wanted this entire time! You're not a new employee at Fazbear Entertainment. The place has been in ruin for quite some time. And even better, doing this now gives you the ability to access all those glitched files. Meaning a whole new set of mini-games. Oh no! Okay, to be fair, the word new might be pushing it a little. Hard mode versions of existing minigames would be more accurate. Because of that, I won't go into such detail about every single one of them like I did for the main ones, but I would like to highlight a couple notable ones. Phaser Blast has a few new rhymes based off other FNAF games, like now you gotta shut the doors on Chica, Bonnie, and Freddy from FNAF 1, or by far the coolest being a fixed spring-trap that you gotta defeat as he teleports around the map. He's got balloon guts and everything. Aw, how sweet. Grab Baby now comes for you in First Aid. Carousel starts with the place already burnt to the ground. There's a ton new private room missions, one featuring the Fun Time animatronics. Break Room has a fucking diabolical hard mode which stars an endoskeleton, making it way harder to see in such a dark room. And there's even this entirely new game altogether where you have to match cards as these endos from Security Breach sneak up on you. This was another petrifying one. I hated those guys in Security Breach and I hate them here too. Alright, at this point I gotta transition into talking about the two endings from Help Wanted 2. I was gonna try do it more naturally, but honestly, they're both so tonally different that I feel like I can't do that. Although weirdly enough, I find it fitting to leave the normal one till last. So throughout the stages, you can find a series of puppets, although I don't know how anyone could get some of these without a guide. And upon finding them all, you're gifted a coin which finally allows you to try out Princess Quest. With this, you're transported to this, honestly, really cool 3D recreation of the actual game, where you're given a sword and have to make your way to the end of the castle. They clearly went through a ton of effort for this, which in retrospect is a tad disappointing when you finally do get to the end of it. Things start promising when you supposedly lay the souls of the 5 dead kids to rest. Again. And walk inside the elevator from Sister Location. But then you find yourself inside a giant claw machine with Venny staring at you, in which you give the glitchy rabbit doll from the first Help Wanted tour and she apparently kills Glitch Trap forever. Okay. I think this would have had more impact if people even realized that Glitch Trap hadn't already been dealt with, but sure. Now, the normal ending is unlocked by acquiring all these Faz Force mechs, these knockoff transformers you get by beating a certain amount of missions. Upon doing so, you're teleported in front of the recharge station from Security Breach, as you find yourself surrounded by security bots. We then cut to one booting up as they hand a mask to... Cassie? This shit ties directly into Ruin? Okay, so this is quite possibly one of the most agreed upon FNAF theories out there, and probably yet another reason why nobody talks about this game. So, and stay with me now, the entire game, you've actually been playing as Cassie's dad. Yes. Now, he was an employee of Fazbear Entertainment, but at some point died, presumably inside the Pizzaplex where he then became a mask security bot somehow. Again, this makes more sense than most of these games. With this, he's been forced to endlessly play minigames, his soul trapped inside a virtual world, only being put at rest after killing Glitch Trap. This wasn't just pulled out of someone's ass either. Ruin has a lot of references to Cassie's dad. Carney comments on you having kids. Most people are comfortable agreeing that this is what's going on here. Honestly, it's pretty straightforward, a breath of fresh air, and again, probably why fans barely discuss it. There's no theorizing to be had. And one of the strangest cases of showcasing the advantage of Scott keeping this story so fucking convoluted, because otherwise, you have situations like this. What if you're playing as Cassie's dad? Huh. Yeah, no, that's probably right. So anyways, Secret of the Mimic. Speaking of, Help Wanted 2 got DLC, sort of, in the form of a secret third ending. I had been collecting these puzzle pieces throughout my playthrough and had no clue they were for this update. Anyways, with them you can put together a puzzle inside a secret room in the hub. When you finish it, whatever it was showing gets put inside the room. Initially, it's this house, but after taking your mask off, it's revealed to be a blue van. Spooky. The back opens, and after putting in a secret code, the Mixes jumps out and tries to escape, before getting sucked back in and the van drives away. That's not all, however.
Oh yeah, dude, see, I didn't even think that's what I...
When you go back to the stage, you see this bizarre white tiger plush, which I recognize from the cover of one of the books. Dude, I gotta read the rest of those at some point. It just seems like such a fucking time sink. Anyways, along with that, you see that you've unlocked the statue of this Jack-in-the-Box named Jackie, along with the costume the Mimic was wearing at the end of Ruin. Obviously, these are all setting up the next game in the series, Secret of the Mimic, the least looking FNAF game yet. I find it really cool that they wanted to throw in a fun teaser like this to get fans excited for the next entry, but at the same time, I worry it'll result in the game only being looked back on as that other VR game that sets up Secret of the Mimic. Which sucks because aside from that, this is a really fun game. One of my favorite FNAF games out of the whole franchise, as a matter of fact. Dare I say I vastly prefer this to the original Help Wanted, and would play this over it any day of the week. What it lacks in scares or direct adaptations, it more than makes up for by just being a good minigame collection. And that's not to even say none of what's in here scared me, because there's a lot of genuinely terrifying shit in here that surpasses the fear I had from playing the first. I think its biggest issue is simply lacking any identity of its own. Which, hey, even if I'm not exactly sold on its direction yet, that's certainly not something I can say about the next game. After dropping off the franchise for the past year, I hate to say it, but FNAF, you've roped me right back in. Which shit, okay, I forgot to talk about Fizzy Faz. It was tedious.